We are back with a recurring guest, friend of the show, coach, athlete, Brandon Slay. How are you?
I'm doing well, Justin. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, I was looking back. I can't believe it's been already 5 years since the last time you've been on the podcast. It's always funny because I talk to people like you all the time and then forget how long and how much time has passed in between episodes. And it's funny because I was looking back and your last episode was titled Brandon Slay Knows His Purpose. And we're going to dive into a lot of kind of what's coming up with you. So I'm excited to dive into all that. Let's start here. The past 9 years, you've been at the PRTC and have been doing some, incredible things, bringing in and coaching some of the absolute best wrestlers in the world, arguably the greatest all time, Jordan Burroughs. Looking back at this almost decade now in Philly, traveling around the world, all these guys there, what do you make of your time in Philly?
Well, the first thing I would say before I get into some of that detail is that none of that would have taken place in Philadelphia. It would have taken place at the PRTC without extremely generous donors. That a lot of us know these RTCs are nonprofits, they're 501c3s, and so you don't get to fulfill your mission and values unless you have
Yeah.
generous people supporting your mission and values. So I just right off the bat, I want to say that all the things I'm about to share about the PRTC would not have taken place without over 300 generous donors, from the monthly donors to the one-time donors. By the way, donors all around the world. We have donors in Santiago, Chile. No, so it's really been a global support system that have allowed us to do what we've done. But I think the answer to your question, when I think about all that, the wrestling fans, they get excited to know that yes, we've had the ability to coach Jordan Burroughs to two world championships when some people thought that there's no way he could go up to 79 and win the worlds, and and they thought maybe he was kind of going downhill. I feel like humbly we were able to take him back to the top of the mountain a couple of times, so that was great. I think we've been able to, I think, coach, if I think back on it, 7 national titles. I mean, think about the Tyler Burgers won the U.S. Open, Dave McFadden won the U.S. Open, Mark Hall winning 2 U.S. Open titles, right? I think we've won 7 national titles. Joey McKenna being an Olympic alternate, making 5 national teams. And then we had a bunch of other guys make national teams as well. But I think that's the type of stuff we get excited about in the wrestling world. And that's cool. When we go to tournaments, we go to win. But if you're asking me what is the most valuable to me, I would say the culture that we built. I would say the PRTC family that we built that really lived out our mission, which was to enrich lives, locally but also globally, all around the world. And we did that through our 4 values, which are faith over fear, full effort, struggling well, and serving others. And the most valuable thing to me is to think about all these wrestlers, from the Richard Perry, my very first athlete, all the way to JILO, who I'm coaching now. We leave for the U.S. Open on Wednesday, right? And every athlete in between, the Doug Zaps, the Joey McKennas, the Jordan Burroughs, right? Mark Halls, Tyler Burgers, all those athletes, from the Richard Perrys all the way to the JILOs, they've they've believed in that culture, and then they live it out. I think and I know a lot of these guys, if the people in the wrestling world come across somebody from the PRTC, one of our athletes, so many times I've just heard them say, "Gosh, that so and so, he's such a great man. He's so serving. He was such a class act." And it's not just to pat me on the back. It's, I think, to pat our leadership, our board, and our culture on the back. And that's going to be some of the most valuable things that I'll look back on.
Yeah, and you've had such an impact. When people talk about the culture and the athletes that are there, you've been a cornerstone of that. And, part of the reason you're on today is you've got a lot going on, and I want to dive into it. I want to dive into a lot of it before we kind of get there. I guess we got to first open the floor to you to share what's, I'm sure when this podcast comes out, the news is out there, but to hear it from you, what's going on?
Yeah, Team Slay, my family, we've made a decision. We're going to move to Springdale, Arkansas from Pennsylvania, which is a big move for us, but we're really excited about that move.
Yeah, and it's a huge, huge transition. I mean, stepping down from the PRTC in a big city like Philadelphia, and then you're going to step into a role with SportsLife Wrestling and launching G1. And I know those are independent things, and we're going to dive into them. But overall, how did this kind of all come together to go make this move from Philly to Arkansas?
The answer to that question, I would say, started about a year ago, Justin. And the way that I would communicate is I just start feeling a nudge on my heart. And that nudge was just kind of just saying, not that I heard an audible voice, but just that nudge was, I think it's time for you to get back closer to home. And I was born and raised in Amarillo, Texas. My wife was born and raised in Little Rock, Arkansas. And we've been raising our 4 kids away from family for 9 years now. And that just means my 4 kids, they don't get to see their grandparents nearly as much, aunts, uncles, cousins, because we made this commitment to be in Philadelphia and lead the PRTC. But after almost 9 years of doing that, as I'm getting older, I have a deeper realization that our parents aren't getting any younger. And my dad's 78, and he has dementia now. It's not early onset, like he has it now. And what that just means is that my dad, he's starting to forget a lot of things. Like he has a great long-term memory. He can tell you what him and I did when I was 8 years old, but he can't tell you what he had for lunch. He can't remember that. And so what that just means is that these commitments I've made with USA Wrestling for 8 years and now the PRTC for over 8 years, they've been in quads because we know why, the Olympics.
Yep.
And I just think if I make another commitment to the next Olympics in LA, that's another 3.5 years that my dad won't spend time with my kids because he doesn't travel anymore. And I know myself is that if I kept my kids separated from my dad for that many years again, and he started forgetting their names and started forgetting them, I would be really mad at myself.
Yeah.
So I think this all started with just candidly is it's time to get back closer to home. Mm-hmm. It's time to get back closer to Amarillo, Texas, but then also my wife's home in Little Rock, Arkansas. But I didn't know what that looked like, Justin. I didn't know. I had no clue. I had that nudge on my heart, but if you'd have said, well, what are you going to do? If you'd asked me that 6 months ago, I have no clue.
Yeah, and I assume the family was obviously a large portion of this. How did the rest of it start coming into fruition when, you mentioned God nudging your heart to get closer to home, and you don't know what that means? So then what happened where these two things come about?
Well, one thing I've learned as I've gotten older is the power of prayer. And I just really started praying for God to open and close doors accordingly. And I think the natural closure of doors came with Tyler Berger retiring from competitive wrestling and going on to MMA, Mark Hall retiring and going to the University of Oklahoma, Dave McFadden taking a job at Cornell, Jordan Burroughs being 36 with 5 kids and deciding that, he might not be competing anymore. Right. Mm-hmm. So there was just, all those are meaningful stories in themselves, but the PRTC, talk about closing doors. It went from 6 athletes to like 5 to 4 to 3. And then it really left me with Jay Ilo and Joey McKenna. Mm-hmm. And then Joey had an opportunity to go to the Cowboy RTC. And what I've told people is that I didn't talk him into that, but I definitely didn't talk him out of that.
Yeah.
Because I love Joey. I've coached Joey for many years, and I want the absolute best for him. So I thought that was going to be a great place for him. And so that really just left me like this exact moment. I have one athlete at the PRTC, JILO. So, and we leave on Wednesday to go to the U.S. Open. I'm going to keep coaching him up right throughout the U.S. Open. If he wins, he doesn't have to wrestle till Final X. So that's the plan. If that come up a little short, then you go to the Challenge Tournament in Louisville, Kentucky in May. And then the plan is to go to Final X. So I'll be coaching him up through the end of June. But those doors just started naturally closing. But then the opening of the doors wasn't taking place yet. So I'll kind of jump in and just start sharing about that, is that I was in Croatia, Zagreb, Croatia in January this year. Yep. And I got a call from a gentleman who just told me that, hey, I'm from Springdale, Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas. Wrestling is really growing in Little Rock with the Arkansas Wrestling Academy and Pat Smith. It's really growing in Little Rock with Coach Erzman. at the University of Arkansas Little Rock. But he said, Brandon, that's 2.5 hours for me. I can't take my kids to Little Rock, 3 times a week. And so he just said he had a passion to grow and continue to develop wrestling in Northwest Arkansas. And he asked me whether I would consider helping him do that by starting a training center, in a town called Springdale. And I just said, wow, let me talk to my wife about that. My wife's from Arkansas. Let's start praying about it. And we really started praying about it. And there's lots of detail that goes into it. But long story short is that we made a decision that I was going to help him start the G1 training center in Springdale, Arkansas. And I think the natural question, people are like, well, what's the G? What's the G stand for? What's the G1? And G1 just stands for God first. And that's going to reflect our mission and values. Our 4 values are going to be faith, so faith in God. Number 2, family. Number 3, a fellowship. And the 4th one's full effort. So that's what the G1 training center is going to be all about.
I love that. And, when you mention faith, family, fellowship, full effort, those are strong values that I think even listeners that are just casually tuning in today, whether it's a coach who's coaching, whether it's an athlete who's competing, or even a fan who just wants to take some of that into their own life. How do you plan on instilling those core values into people?
I think the way we'll instill those values into the G1 training center will be the same way that we instilled our values in the PRTC, and that's just constant repetition. Constant repetition of values. Repetition produces greatness. And like we did at the PRTC, I repeated those all the time. I encourage our athletes to repeat them all the time. We prayed through those values all the time. Before my wrestlers of the PRTC went on the mat, we prayed for them to have faith in Jesus Christ over any fear that came their way. We prayed for them to give full effort. We prayed for them to struggle well and to not just thinking about themselves and to serve others. So repeating them, praying over them, just having those in the forefront that allowed us to make sure those values became real at the PRTC. And I think at the G1 Training Center, we're going to do the same thing. I would imagine we're going to put those on the wall mats, for the young adults, for the 6-year-olds all the way to the 18-year-olds. I can already envision, we've already kind of drawn this out, that one of the wall mats will say faith. Another wall mat will say family. Another wall mat's going to say fellowship. Another wall mat is going to say full effort. And so they're going to be ever present in front of them, Justin. And then as leaders of the G1 Training Center's coaches, we'll continue to repeat those and pray over those and make sure that wrestlers and families and parents that choose to join the G1 Training Center, they're going to know, don't join the G1 Training Center unless you're on board with God being first. Don't join the G1 Training Center unless you're supportive of faith, family, fellowship, and full effort. So that's how we'll do it.
I love that. And this next question, I know one of the answers, which if you don't give it, I'll give it. But I've seen the renderings and I love construction, so it's always fun to see that kind of stuff. World-class facility with mats, weights, recovery, housing, Bible studies.
Yep.
How did this is not just your come wrestle in the gym and go home. This is a full training center. You were telling me there's suites where people can stay. How did this come about to this level? And in your perspective, what kind of differentiates G1 from a traditional wrestling academy?
Well, no disrespect to any other academy or club. We understand places are called this club or this wrestling academy. Like, I understand that, and I respect that. But I didn't want this place, this building, to be all about just wrestling. And so that's why we had conversations about, should we call it the G1 Wrestling Academy? Should we call it the G1 Wrestling Club? And ultimately, I really came back to no, I want to call it the G1 Training Center, because there's going to be a lot more training that takes place here than besides teaching a double leg and the knee pound drill and have to close the match down with the lead with 30 seconds left. Right? I could keep going with technique. There's going to be a lot more taught at the G1 Training Center than just wrestling. I mean, like you mentioned, thankfully, we're going to build out offices in a big conference room. I can already foresee us having Bible studies there for men in the area, having Bible studies for young men who are willing to come early and learn from the leaders there. So there's going to be spiritual training taking place. There's going to be mental training taking place. There's going to be technical training taking place. So it won't just be a wrestling academy. It's going to be something greater. And, like you mentioned, we're going to have a strength and conditioning room, a weight room.
Yep.
We're going to have a sauna and a cold plunge recovery center. And that will mostly be for the senior level athletes to come in.
Yeah.
But we're also going to have 3 suites that we build out that, for example, if Joey McKenna wants to drive from Stillwater, which I think is only 2.5 hours to Springdale, if he wants to bring, a cowboy wrestler and they want to come train with us, with me for a couple days, then we'll have a place for him to stay. He can wrestle, he can lift weights, he can sit in the sauna and recover.
Love that.
So we're going to bring I've already had great conversations with Kyle Snyder. He said, Coach, you let me know. I'm looking forward to come spend a few days with you. And so the wrestlers like the Joey McKennas and the Kyle Snyders and the Jordan Burroughs of the world and many more, the G1 training center is going to be open to them and anyone else that wants to come there and not just get wrestling training, but get some spiritual training and life training.
Yeah, and you know what? I was never a good wrestler, despite what my high school coach who came on here and said. But I wish I had these kind of opportunities when I was younger. And it's crazy. You talk about guys like Burroughs and McKenna and Snyder and how much they've poured into youth and younger wrestlers. What do you hope the younger generation takes away from that kind of access and mentorship of having those guys in the same facility?
Well, I hope that they take away that these men that I will bring in, and even the Chase Pammies of the world, who I used to coach, who runs the Gold Rush Wrestling Academy in Las Vegas. We're already talking about how we can kind of partner with him and have cross-training opportunities. I hope what they learn from it is that there's going to be men, they're heroes. They're going to come into this training center that have the same worldview as our values. That they're going to have heroes like Joey McKenna, Kyle Snyder, Jordan Burroughs, Chase Pammy, right, etc. That these men, they too believe that God should come first in your life. They too will tell you that their faith is the most important thing in their life, followed by their family, followed by their fellowship with other Christians and believers, and that they too will tell you that they value giving full effort and not just winning gold medals. So what I want these wrestlers at G1 Training Center to take away is that the wrestlers that have been the most successful in our sport in the United States, that they live out and represent the values that we've established at the G1 Training Center.
And when I was looking back and thinking about it, you've coached at every level, youth, college, senior, and now you're stepping into a role that's more holistic, eternal in nature. You've always been internally focused. The greater goal, as you've coined it, referred to it, done a podcast, Talk to me about the juxtaposition of coaching at these 3 different levels and how that kind of excites you for this now.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, they may know me, but they don't always, and they know maybe I have multiple kids, but they don't always know I have 3 girls, 13-year-old, 11-year-old, and 9-year-old, but then also have a son, Sawyer, who's 6, Saw Dog, right? So I hope Sawyer ends up wrestling. I'm not going to make him wrestle. I'm not going to force him to wrestle. But what I'm excited about is having the G1 Training Center where he can come inside that room, run around the mats, and hopefully just be inspired to start wrestling. And if he does, Justin, I would imagine I'm going to be spending a lot more time with youth wrestling than I have been the last 17 years going to world championships in Croatia, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and just focusing on seniors. My hope and prayer with my son is that he begins wrestling and that I would be around in the training center, not only encourage him, but the 6, 7, 8-year-olds, the middle school wrestlers. The plan is to develop elite high school wrestlers, and then again, like we've said, to bring in some of these senior wrestlers, which the senior wrestlers won't be my main priority, but I think they're going to be a fantastic supplement to what we do there. And we know the senior level wrestlers, we know this, they'll say this, every once in a while, they got to get out of town. They've got to leave their RTC. They need to go get a fresh perspective. And hopefully the G1 Training Center and humbly, hopefully I can provide that for them.
Yeah. And another thing you have going on too, a couple more questions about G1, but I do want to bring this up. You're also stepping into a role with SportsLife Wrestling. Tell me a little bit about that and how that came about.
Well, SportsLife I'm going to be the executive director of SportsLife Wrestling, which also is a fairly new startup, a ministry, and it's a sports specific ministry out of Sports Life Leadership, which was founded about 6 months ago. And Sports Life Wrestling, our main mission is going to be to infuse life into the world of wrestling, one leader at a time. And what's really cool about this is I believe the G1 Training Center is a fantastic partner
Yeah.
to do this,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm going to need an office and a conference room to be the executive director of Sports Life Wrestling. And thankfully, the G1 Training Centers can provide that for me. But just to back up a skosh, is that I felt confident about taking the job as the head coach of the G1 Training Center. And I looked at my day, and I'll coach some young wrestlers, say from 8 to 9:30 in the morning. I'll coach some older wrestlers maybe from 4:45 to 6 in the afternoon. I'm gonna empower some other coaches to work with the little biddies. So it's not just gonna be I'm not gonna be the only coach. We'll have multiple coaches at G1. But what that means, when I shared this with my wife, what she really quickly realized is she said, "Okay, so you said 8 to 9:30, Brandon, and you said 4:45 to 6." She said, "My wife's like, what are you going to do from 10 to 4?" And so my wife works from home, and pretty much what she's saying is that I'm working from home. I don't need you at home bothering me. So her question is, what else are you going to be doing during the day? And I didn't know about the Sports Life Wrestling opportunity yet. And I was kind of like, that's a great question for my wife. What am I going to do? And if you and I are friends, if you and I got on a call, just talking friend to friend, you would probably say, "Well, Brandon, what do you want to do?" That's the natural question. If you could do anything from 10 to 4, what would you do? And my answer to that is that I would do ministry. I would love to find a way to maximize ministry for wrestling in the United States, but not just the United States, all around the world. And that's where that was on my heart. And then I get a call from Carl Perry, who now is on staff with Sports Life Leadership. And he said, "Brandon, would you ever consider being the executive director of Sports Life Wrestling, our sport specific ministry focused on wrestling?" And I said, "Well, I mean, where would I have to work?" He said, "You can work anywhere you want." I said, "I can work anywhere I want." And I said, "Do I have like fixed hours?" He said, "No, it's a blank canvas. You're going to create the vision. You're going to build off the mission, and you can do it from anywhere." And that's where I was like, cha-ching, like that's what I could do from 10 to 4. And that's where this partnership between the G1 Training Center and Sports Life Wrestling comes in. And I love this about God, because at the PRTC, Justin, my title was to be the executive director and the head coach of the Pennsylvania Regional Training Center. And now I'm going to be the executive director of Sports Life Wrestling and the head coach of the
Right.
G1 Training Center. So it'll just be two different organizations, but I think that they have very, very similar values, and they're going to build off each other.
Yeah. And you've always been super vocal about your faith. How does it feel now to lead an organization where faith isn't just part of the culture, it's literally the cornerstone of both aspects of what you're going to do now?
It's time. It's time for me to do that. I'm going to be 50 years old this year. If anybody's watching that, they're going, "Dang, Coach Slay's beard's getting really gray." Like, yeah, it is. I'm going to be 50 this year, and I've worked for multiple fantastic secular organizations.
Yep.
USA Wrestling, the PRTC. As we know, those aren't faith-based organizations per se. And my answer to your question, Justin, is it's time for me. It's time for me. I've always, you know me, I've always been bold in my faith. I've never held back and tried to hide it. I've always tried to be a light, on a hill. But I feel like now in 2025, with the way our culture is and the divisions in our culture, the divisions in our country, the divisions in our world, I'm just ready to be bold and make sure everybody knows that the greatest thing in my life is my
Yeah.
faith in Jesus Christ. And that's where the faith in G1 is going to be faith, not faith in some subjective God of energy. It's going to be faith in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. And so I'm looking forward to being bold at the G1 Training Center. And then clearly, the Sports Life Wrestling is all about being bold. I mean, they are a ministry focused on infusing life, infusing Jesus, right, into the world of wrestling, one leader at a time. So It's time, Justin. Again, not that I've ever hid my faith, not that I've ever um, tried to shy away from it. I've always tried to be bold, but I'm really excited now that I can be even more bold.
Yeah, I love that. And you mentioned USA Wrestling in Colorado Springs. You mentioned the PRTC in Philly. These are two places where wrestling is very popular. It's very known. What excites you the most about kind of helping build up wrestling from the ground up in Arkansas?
Well, I think it's entrepreneurial, and what I mean by that is that I went to school at the University of Pennsylvania. I got my degree from the Ward School of Business and Finance and Entrepreneurial Management. So I feel like I've always had this pioneer, trailblazing entrepreneurial spirit in me. And clearly, USA Wrestling's been around for a long time. But when they asked me to coach there in 2009, I mean, there was two athletes in the
Yeah,
resident training center, like two. It was Derek Moore and Mike Tamalo, and they were two totally different weight classes, 61 kilo and 97 kilos. So they couldn't even train together. So at USA Wrestling, I had to build up the resident training center at USA Wrestling and help build up that development program at USA Wrestling, where we brought in the Kyle Snyders of the world,
yeah,
who won the world title at 19, right? And won
yeah.
the Olympics at 20. And so I feel like I did that for 8 years, and I feel like I left it in a great place. And then the PRTC was a total startup. It was founded essentially in 2014, 2015, and I was hired in 2016. So it was it was taking a startup again, the PRTC, and
Yeah.
taking it from essentially was one athlete when I took it, Richard Perry. And then we added Chase Pammy was the next one, then BJ Futrell, then Dan Valmont. Then we had four guys, and those guys transitioned. And then it was adding Joey McKenna, and then adding Dave McFadden, adding Mark Hall, adding Jordan Burroughs, adding Tyler Berger, adding Doug Zaff, adding JILO. I share all that just to say that that didn't take place like in 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
there
Right.
was a there was an entrepreneurial healthy growth at USA Wrestling,
Yep.
and I think there was an entrepreneurial healthy growth at the PRTC. And like a serial entrepreneur, I'm excited to do this again.
Yeah.
And Springdale, Arkansas, I'm excited to do this with the G1 Training Center. I'm excited to do this with a startup, SportsLife Wrestling, and you know, God willing, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you and I will do another podcast, and we'll get to talk about all the things that God's done, not Brandon,
Yeah.
but all the things that God's done through these organizations.
Let's not wait that long, Brandon. We don't have to wait that long to have you back on. Listen, I'm very business minded. I own a marketing agency helping small businesses for a living. So the business side of wrestling, I think, is fun to talk about and get out there more. Circling back to Philly and what you built there before we kind of close this conversation out, you've poured so much into building something special at PRTC. What are you most proud of with your time there, and what do you kind of hope your legacy will be in Philly?
Like I kind of mentioned before, I'm the most proud of the culture, and I hope that my legacy will be that they will continue that culture on. And what I mean by that they will continue on with our mission to enrich lives locally and globally through the sport of wrestling. And what that means locally, that means partnering with Penn Wrestling, right? Sharpen the Penn Wrestlers, the Drexel Wrestlers, which are one block away, the Beat the Streets Philly Wrestlers. I think they have 1,600 wrestlers now
Wow.
in the Beat the Streets Philly program. So when you use that term, the Philly Wrestling ecosystem, right, that's clearly the PRTC, Penn Wrestling, Drexel Wrestling, and Beat the Streets Philly Wrestling. So I hope that they continue on with that legacy, enriching lives locally, but also enriching lives globally. And again, what I share, I'm not sharing it to tap myself on the back, but when we go to Kazakhstan, we get our athletes and we go visit orphanages. We go speak to kids there. If we get a chance to go to Cuba, we try to take as much extra gear as we can because I saw a Cuban wrestler take a sweat filled shirt off the gym floor one time and put it in his bag so he could have an extra shirt, right? So when we go to Cuba, we go to places like that. We want to enrich lives globally as well. So I hope that that continues on, Justin,
Yeah.
but also hope that the values of faith over fear, full effort, struggle well, and serve others continue. And you and I both know for some people, and a secular organization, that faith over fear, that faith, that confide, that word fide is where we get the word faith, right? That confidence they have over any fear. I hope that continues on in them. And I hope that they commit to giving full effort and they struggle well and that they continue to serve others. So, my hope is that that part of my legacy and our legacy continues.
Good answer. As we close here, Brandon, for the wrestlers, families, fans who followed your journey, what else is there? Anything else you want them to know about this next chapter and how they can support what you're building with both G1, Sports Life, and all that?
Yeah, one thing that's really important to me is for people to know I'm going to stay. They've asked me to stay on the board, to be a board member of the PRTC. So it's not like I'm just totally like skipping town and I'm not involved in the PRTC anymore. I'll be on monthly board calls where I'll get a chance to share my experience and wise counsel with the PRTC. So I want people to understand that I'm not leaving because there was any type of friction. Like I said before, it's really a family decision for me. But I'll continue on as a board member of the PRTC, and that I just want people to know that we are a startup with G1. We're a startup, SportsLife Wrestling. So be patient with us. We're just getting our social media going, but I think you can find both of them on X and Instagram under G1 Training Center and SportsLife Wrestling. So start following us because we will appreciate your support. And the last thing I would say is that with SportsLife Wrestling, I'm going to have to raise my own support to fund the ministry. And I had to raise my own support at the PRTC, not only mine, but everybody else's for that matter. So I'm actually excited just to have to raise one person's support, just mine. But I'll have to raise my own support at SportsLife Wrestling. So over time, as I come across like wrestling fans and friends along this journey, like I look forward to having conversations with people and that people would consider supporting my ministry through SportsLife Wrestling.
I love it. I'm in your corner, Brandon. All right. I think that's all I got for you. Any final words here before I let you go?
No, we're excited to move to Arkansas, and we'll load up Team Slay at the end of June and July, and we'll be there soon.
Man, you're moving to Arkansas. I got one of my brothers moving to Florida. Another one wants to move to Florida. Everybody's moving away from the Northeast. Maybe God's trying to tell me something.
Well, I think some people appreciate lower taxes and more conservative principles, Justin.
That'll preach. That'll preach. All right, I'll link up everything in the description below, and if you guys obviously reach out to either one of us if you have more questions or want more insight, and thank you for making some time to come on and talk more about this latest move.
Thanks for your time, Justin.
Awesome. We'll chat soon, man. Have a good rest of the day.